So I want to recap section 2 here because there's a lot of high-level theory and a lot of philosophy, and I want to make sure we get some solid takeaways from this section. So we talked about simplicity and making sure our price action system is simple to make our lives way easier. And we get a lot of upgrades by a simple process. So we have that efficient chart chunking where we can easily look through a bunch of charts and distill complex information down into tradable signals. And then we talked about robustness, how simple methods last through many different market regimes. We don't have to worry about trading or changing them and tweaking them as soon as a market regime changes. And finally, a simple method allows us to measure and improve it. And that's extremely key going forward, because if we can't measure our progress and evaluate our progress or accurately figure out what's working and what's not, it's going to be very, very hard to grow, evolve, and improve. So that's why we want to have a relatively simple price action technical system. Then we transition into the whole debate of techs versus fundies, because we wanted to touch on that. A lot of people like to place themselves into one camp. We don't. We like them both. And we talked about how at a high enough level, they're really the same thing. It's all just data. And you could have fundamental data, which is just a time series. You could have a chart, which is just a time series of price. So it's all just data and inputs to an overall process. And if we use both, we can take advantage of the emergent property that we get, which is the interplay between fundamentals and price. So if we can take fundamental information within the context of price action and take price action within the context of fundamental information, we get a whole new takeaway that gives us a source of edge. And then we went on to talk about how at the end of the day, we are going to pay more attention to price and hold more weight to price because it's ultimately what we buy and sell. So an account statement, all it is your trades at how many shares you bought at what price, and then how many shares you sold at what price. So the fundamental narratives never show up in the account statement. So ultimately, we are a slave to the tape, as Paul Tudor Jones famously said. And another reason why we like to put a little more weight on price is because it keeps us fallible and open to other perspectives. So it lets us stay humble, and it lets us exit our trades with grace and submit to the fact that a lot of our fundamental ideas aren't going to be right. And we're not going to hold on to our narratives and blow out our account. Then we went on to talk about the possibilities, not predictions concept. So charts and price action are not there to predict the future. They're only there to give us clues and help us manage a game of uncertainty. And then the analogy we made was between poker and trading. So poker is very instructive of what trading should be like, where we're never going to really know what the other guy's cards are. All we have is the clues and the community cards on the board, in the case of Texas Hold'em, to make educated guesses at what he does have. And it's the same thing with any type of price action or charting system, is we have clues about what could happen, but we're never going to know for sure. So we want to approach price action trading with that type of mindset. That way we don't fall prey to getting burned out if a trade is a loser. Then we went on to talk about Sturgeon's law and how most things are crap, and that's true in most things in life, whether it be movies, books, TV shows, etc., that all get created. And the same thing with trades and chart setups. Most of it is not good. It's not going to be a source of edge for us. So we want to focus on quality, crispness, and clarity when we're applying price action analysis to a market. And that's very key to make sure that we stick with the pockets of clarity and we stay away from a lot of the noise. And then we segue that into discussing the noise and talking about randomness and what the other side, why they think that the markets can be random and why they believe in efficient market hypothesis. But in our opinion, markets are not random. They're just seen that way when you don't have the proper tools or you're not in a pocket of clarity. So we know that players are emotional, traders and investors are emotional, and they're going to push prices around, creating pockets of inefficiency that hopefully our tools can pick up and exploit. So that's the goal of what we want to try to do, is use price action to surf through the noise and find pockets of clarity. But we want to approach the process as a skeptic. So we had that spectrum where we had everything's random on this side and every tick means something on this side. This side is full of the narrative fallacy, which we don't want to fall prey to. And this side is academia, where everything's random. We actually want to start here and move this way so we don't fall prey to classifying noise as something that's a tradable signal, because we know our tools aren't perfect enough to explain everything. And we need to accept the noise and accept that most of the time, 90% of everything is crap and we can't explain anything. So if we start from this end and move in, we'll be more in line with Sturgeon's law and more likely to only strike when we see pockets of clarity, versus this, if we start on this side, which is, trying to explain every single tick and move that way, we're more prone to over trading and trading subpar setups. So as far as action steps for this section, I want you to go and do an audit of your current price action and technical process. And if you don't have one yet, that's all right. But if you do, really examine it and ask yourself the following questions. Does it help you simplify? So is this price action process simplifying a very complex system that is the market and helping you make better trade decisions in a more efficient way? Secondly, is it robust? Is it something that's simple enough to where it's going to last through different market cycles? If the S&P 500 starts to go into a bear market, will your analytical technique still hold up? And the third question is, can you measure the performance of the process? So you should be able to do quarterly reviews or yearly reviews or biannual reviews and be able to list out each key point of your price action process. And if you can't, then you won't be able to tell what's performing well and what's performing bad. So we need to make sure that we have a measurable process. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to improve. So really look out for that and see, can you measure the performance of your current price action technical process? And then finally, is it rejecting most ideas? Is it stringent? Is it on the appropriate side of that spectrum where, let me draw it out again, it's not trying to explain every single candle on the chart on this side, right? It's more assuming that everything's noise, and then every so often it finds a nice trade. So if your process is filtering out and giving you very, very little trading ideas, that's actually a good thing. The more trade ideas it's giving you, the less stringent it is and the less amount of filtering and quality ideas that you're going to get out of it. So really look deeply into it and say, hey, is this being stringent enough? Is this rejecting most trading ideas?